This week's podcast is brought to you by Summit Massage in Tracy. Holidays got you stressed out? Aches and pains slowing you down? Life giving you a headache? Contact Jay at Summit Massage and let that stress melt away. Customized massage therapy to help you get back to your best. Call Jay at 507-626-0841 today.
Welcome to another edition of the Headlight Hot Seat. My name is Per. I am your host for the next half hour or so. And with me today is Mr. Dan Peterson of Walnut Grove fame. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thank you, Per. Nothing like hanging out with another good Peterson.
Yeah, with an O-N, right?
Correct.
That's the right way to spell it. Let's get to know Dan a little bit. Why don't you tell us about growing up and your education and everything like that?
All right. Well, I'm a Walnut Grove native, and I graduated from Walnut Grove, went off to college at Mankato State, graduated from there with a degree in secondary education and coaching. A little bit after that, I worked in victim services, actually, worked with crime victims for about 5 years, did a 24-hour crisis line, all kinds of court advocacy, did some stuff in the schools, and then took a job teaching at Westbrook Walnut Grove after doing some subbing at local schools, including Tracy, which was nice to meet a lot of longtime teachers around the area that way before I actually started coaching. And I was at Westbrook Walnut Grove for 10 years. And I coached basketball, football, and track for the most part. And earlier on, I did Little League Baseball and volleyball for a couple of years as well.
And recently married, right?
And recently married this fall. Pretty exciting, yep. Better late than never. Mm-hmm. My wife is an architect, works for the University of Iowa, so we go back and forth until she retires in a year or two, so it's very good.
Well, Tara's middle child, Ben, who we just talked about, he's going to Iowa State.
Oh, really? He's going to be a Cyclone, huh?
He's going to be a Cyclone, and there was a little bit of a back and forth between Iowa and Iowa State, but you know how you visit colleges and you just know kind of that this is my place. So,
oh, that's awesome.
That's cool. Let's go back a little bit and preface this. Dan is obviously an historian. For those of you who don't know, he is a real hardcore historian from Walnut Grove. And I want to know, Dan, where did that passion for history come from? When did you know that, you know what, I do like to dig into this stuff, history, local or statewide, national, whatever it is. But
sure.
For you, it's local. But when did that fire get lit for you?
You know, there's a few factors, and primarily it leads back to my family. Number one, my grandpa was a great storyteller, and so he would tell me stories and the history of things all the time. And secondly, when I was 9, my dad was killed in an accident moving a grain bin, and so my dad's side was a generation older than my mom's side. And so my grandparents were older when I was born. They were in their 70s. And so I never got to know that side of the family. And so my love of history ties into history, genealogy.
Okay.
So I started as a 10-year-old walking around, kind of like a little pair newspaper reporter, going around asking questions of all my relatives. And
nosy reporter, weren't you?
And trying to figure out... mainly with the Peterson side, half of the family came over from Denmark and half stayed there, but we lost contact. Once the Nazis invaded Denmark is when the two sides lost contact. And so I wanted to know what happened to the other half, and that's one of the big stories that got me started at a young age. But that and having good history teachers. Ed Douglas, for those of you from Walnut Grove, probably remember Mr. D. He was quite a character, wrestling coach, historian. Always had his big board of education in his classroom, so making sure everyone behaved.
You know, I've always wanted to ask you, Dan, is history lost on the younger generation? I know, outside of school where it's textbooks and, well, not textbooks anymore, it's Googling. I wonder if today's youth care about history like they should. Not as much as you, maybe, because that's your life, and maybe it's because I'm older, but not everyone's going to be a historian.
Right.
What's the difference between you and someone, maybe a teenager, for example. And do they get into it? Do they care about it? I just did a story for this week's paper, talking to the Legion commander in Slayton, Brad Pagel, about 9/11, and now 9/11 in our schools has, in his words, has become a footnote, a couple paragraphs in the textbook, much maybe like Pearl Harbor did too. What do you think about letting the kids have this window to history, or is that window closed?
That's a really good question. I think you hit it on the nail, kind of, in the beginning, and is that I think most people get more nostalgic as we get older, and we like to remember remember our youth and things that happened in the past more so. I'm not teaching anymore. Just as a side note, I came down with something that I struggle with daily now, and that's it's POTS syndrome. And so that's kind of a health issue that's kept me, one of the reasons I'm not teaching and coaching anymore. And so I've kind of lost that contact with the younger kids now that I had when I was actually in the school system. So it's hard to answer that question. But I really do think some of it is being lost. Just for example, I wish more people would read, for example. And it seems that a lot of the kids that I know, that I do talk to, my neighbors and things, that reading a book is not something that's high on their priority list,
No
for
matter
example.
what the subject is,
no
history, sports, or whatever.
Well, that again depends. Probably age and type of book, relevant. But I hope there are. I mean, and to me, and the way I always told my students is that if you don't like history class, then you have a bad teacher, because history is nothing but the stories of life and stories of each one of us. And so if you find it boring, then your teacher's probably not a great storyteller, or is not making it fun enough for you, which is not that teachers are supposed to be entertainers as well, but...
Well, history is a tough one, though, because
it is.
I was a solid C student when it comes to history. That was on a good day. Ladahoff tried, Coulter tried, Bolin tried. They all did their best to drill it into me, and
Sure.
I never got it. And when you say the age thing, I was 17, 18 at the time, and I didn't care. I just wanted to pass the class.
Right.
Now I'm older, and since I started the Headlight doing all this history stuff, I love it now, especially local history.
Yeah.
Tracy, Walnut Grove, Belton, the area. And that's where you come in, right? That Walnut Grove touch.
Well,
What's that
I
like for
can
you?
relate to what you're, because I know that you're a lover of sports, all sports, and I was the same way when I was in high school as well. And so again, if they would have been teaching sports history in Coulter Laddyhouse class, you'd have been an A-plus student.
roll,
See,
I mean,
exactly. So, I think with time our tastes change as well. And there's a lot of ways you have to try and, as a teacher, you have to try and touch kids that way. They all learn differently. They all have different interests, and so again, that's where it kind of comes back to the classroom. But again, there's only so much time you have to teach, and there's so many.
I don't know if I thought history was boring. I'm too old to remember.
Right.
And for some kids, it's natural. They're just smart in everything. And some kids gravitate toward, whether it's art or whatever. And some kids gravitate toward history. Did you do that in high school? Were you like, I can't wait for my next history class? Or
No, not really. No, sports was my thing too. I mean, I was always a good student, but it just came easy, and I think that's a big part of it too. But again, I think the personality, I mentioned Eddie Douglas as being one of my history teachers. He had a wild personality, and he would, for example, come into the classroom riding his unicycle.
what?
He was a character. Not only that, he was my neighbor, and so I got to know him. But I think people can have an influence as well. So I think he played a part of it.
So we're in the holiday season. Dan informed me that he's got some holiday trivia for us, and he's gonna test your knowledge. So I will not give away the answer, and I probably won't even know it anyway. But why don't you go ahead, Dan? Start us off with some holiday.
All right,
trivia.
we'll start with an easy one. Santa Claus's suit was not always red in illustrations and depictions. What color originally was jolly old Saint Nick's costume?
Do you want to give these answers away at the end?
We can do it however you would like
Let's
to do it.
let people think about this. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm going to say green because red and green, but we won't give that away right now.
That sounds good. If you just want to throw one of these in every once in a while, we'll start easy.
We will definitely. That was easy.
That was the easy one.
Oh boy. All right. Moving on. What do you focus on, Dan? It's not all Walnut Grove, is it? Or
No,
I know it's a lot of it's Walnut Grove.
a lot of it's Walnut
Because that's
Grove.
where you.
I should tell you a little bit more about my my history stuff. I do have a Facebook page called Dan's History Works, and that does focus primarily on Walnut Grove history stuff. But I have branched out, and one of the areas that I've enjoyed branching out into is genealogy and tracing people's family histories. And so, of course, that's going to take us all over the place.
But not just your family, though.
No,
We're
not
talking
just
about-
mine. No, I do all kinds of people's, anybody's. And some have been very challenging. My my wife now. I should still go, oh boy, that was close.
Yeah,
But,
no, you said it.
Yes, my wife.
She's going to hear it.
My wife is of African American descent, and so tracing her family was quite an interesting journey for me. For example, and some, we live amongst a lot of Swedes and Norwegians and Danes in this area, and that area of European research is much different than. For example, I was hired to do a Russian family, for example. Oh. That's much more challenging in some of those areas. But anyway, genealogy. So that's one area that branches into. It can go in many ways. The other interesting fact, that's kind of a fun story. I won't share the person's name, but a friend of mine was adopted, and so. DNA has become a part of genealogy now, and my friend is in their 60s and was able to get their DNA tested, and I was able to help hunt down her biological parents.
No way. Cool.
And it just happens to be that both her mom and her dad are still alive. And then I did back on each of those lines for her, so she had a sense of where they came from and where her history come from. And she was lucky enough to go out and meet her biological mother in Colorado earlier this summer.
Oh, goodness.
And we're hoping that we can get her to get in contact with her biological father yet. So I've had a couple stories like that. I did. I worked at the End of the Line Museum for one summer. And
That doesn't surprise me.
and so I did learn more about railroad history there. But anyway, that was when 59 was under construction or whatever, and so there was or not 59. 59. So they had detoured some people around or whatever, and a couple elderly ladies from the Twin Cities area they got detoured and saw the place and just stopped for a break and ended up visiting with them. And ended up doing their family history because their grandmother had been adopted. And so I was able to find out, and which is not always the case, but find her her real biological parents for them. And it had been a mystery in their family, and then traced it. And I still got a Christmas card every year until they both passed away.
So when about was that again?
What's that?
When about was that?
Oh my goodness, this was about, I don't remember the exact year. Somebody that knows the highway construction stuff could tell you better, but it was probably early 2000s.
Yeah, but that's funny how life works, isn't it?
Just a chance meeting.
A chance meeting, totally.
So yes, it's not just local history, but that's what most people around, I work part-time at the Lower Ingalls Wilder Museum as well. And I'm helping with collections and archiving and stuff like that. And so that's kind of my specialty, just because that's what people usually come to me for.
Yeah. I love that story, though, because it shows how history can bring people together. Total strangers, never seen each other before, and then you end up doing this and having a relationship with them.
Right.
That's really cool.
And, you know, being from Walnut Grove with the Little House on the Prairie stuff, that's another thing. It doesn't matter where you go across the country and you can say you're from, do you know where Mankato is or Worthington, Minnesota? Heck no. I'm from this little town called Walnut Grove. Walnut Grove, Little House on the, yeah, that's the one.
Well, I know, and I'm gonna segue into my next question is,
Sure.
you know, history and Walnut Grove are synonymous with the Ingalls family, with the Wilder pageant, the TV show, the whole 9 yards. But before we did this podcast, you were talking to me about there's a lot of things that people may not know. The hockey team, boxing. What the heck? I did not know that. I'm sure anyone listening to this probably doesn't know that either. Tell me about that hockey team.
Yeah, it's very interesting. One of the projects I did was a 2-volume sports history of Walnut Grove School, and I didn't know it either. But back in the 30s, we had a traveling hockey team that would go and play. We didn't have obviously an indoor arena with or anything like that, but they certainly would flood a rink and practice, and then they would go to the bigger town, Marshall, New Ulm, traveled around, which was a shock for those days. As I mentioned also, they had a boxing team for a while, which you often don't think of as in our little schools. But
So this is school sanctioned? Or was it just a town thing? Or?
no, it was there was a school sanctioned
Okay.
sanctioned thing. Another little odd fact that a lot of people didn't know that many people around here have heard of an area outside of Walnut Grove referred to as the rodeo grounds. Well, we used to have rodeos, and in fact, we held the very first Minnesota State High School rodeo outside of Walnut Grove, for example. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting tidbits of information when it comes to sports like that. A lot of fun stuff.
As I talk to you, I always learn something from you every time we talk. And one recent conversation we had, I think it was when I did a story on you about the fire in Walnut Grove. And that's always stuck with me. One, because it's a fire.
Right.
All fires are, you know, a point of remembrance for people. But this was a major fire that, am I hyperbolizing when I say it destroyed the downtown? Is that going too far? Or?
No, that it destroyed the one half of the downtown.
Half of downtown.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was so hot it was actually cracking the windows on the other side of the stores. So, yeah, that was the fire of 1903. And if you look at all the little town histories, we all have a lot of the similar things. Tracy had a huge fire in the 1890s as well, and other things like that. But Walnut Grove was especially a good story. In the fact that it led to many changes, but it ties into, I've done some different publications. We mentioned a couple of my books, but one of them, I've done a short book on the fire of 1903, simply because it tied into the temperance and prohibition movements of the time.
Okay.
And it all started with, in the early days, each town would vote. Each township, each town or village would vote each year whether they're going to allow the sale of alcohol or not within their bounds. And so 1903, Walnut Grove decided to go wet again, as they said. You could go dry or wet. And so they decided to sell alcohol again. And all of a sudden, we had 5 saloons pop up on the south side of the street. And with that came some gambling. And pretty soon, some of the establishments weren't following the local laws. For example, you were not allowed to have shades or curtains or blinds on the windows. Everybody had to be able to see what was going on in there. You were not supposed to be having anything going on Sundays. And all these rules were being broken. And finally, a woman that lived, as you go down the hill to the lower Plum Creek Park, that's where she and her husband lived, where the Munson family lives now, close to there. And she finally fed up with her husband. He was going in. He was a well digger, and he was going into town on Sundays, his only day off, and gambling and drinking at the saloon. She finally had enough. They had 2 little kids, and she dropped the kids off at the neighbors and got the horse and his pistol and rode to town, and also a hatchet, and chopped her way into the saloon and said, if this doesn't stop, she went in, held him at gunpoint and threw the cards and poker chips, everything out the window onto the street, and said, if this doesn't stop, that something worse is going to happen. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, it may have stopped her husband for a while, I'm guessing, but obviously it didn't stop. But a fire started behind that burned down the whole south side of Main Street, except for it burned everything in the whole block except for a livery barn where Dave and Wanda Hoyt live now. And the thing about it was it happened in March, and we had organized a fire department, but it was not well organized. The water tank was empty, and the hoses to the fire apparatus to actually shoot the water didn't fit the machine.
Is this because they didn't think they'd have to use it?
They hadn't used it since they got it, and so it was just kind of, we'll do it. We'll get around to it, I think, is probably what happened. But they soon realized in a hurry that they were in trouble, and so they telegraphed Tracy and they telegraphed Lamberton for help because they had such things as water cars. They could bring a water car. But of course, by the time they got to Walnut, they were able to save the other side of the street, like I said. But Lamberton was in the same situation. Their hoses didn't fit their apparatus once they got it there. But like I said, Tracy had that huge fire in the 1890s, so they were a little more prepared. But it taught us a whole bunch of lessons. It changed the building codes in town, and it made the fire department take things more seriously. But there's a lot of good stories on.
I can't imagine fire departments in this day and age. They're always ready. I mean, and of course they have the technology and the equipment that they didn't have back in 1900s. Right. But just the public outcry that you would see now on social media. What's our fire department doing? This is crazy. What are they doing? It's just amazing. Speaking of history in Walnut Grove, I never figured out where the nickname Loggers came from. Mm-hmm. The Walnut Grove Loggers, which is an awesome nickname, almost as good as the Scrappers. What's the origin of the Loggers?
What it comes from is where the Lower Plum Creek Park is now. There was, back in the day, we didn't have the number of trees that we do nowadays. It was mainly prairie. And so when you looked across the prairie, it was tall prairie grasses. And all of a sudden, when you got to a certain point, there was a huge ravine full of walnut trees, which was an oddity on the prairie at that time. For example, in the 1870s, Redwood County, for example, planted over 1 million trees that year alone. So looked nothing like now, but that was when some of the early explorers, for example, Joseph Nicolay came through, I believe in 1838. He writes about it in his journal. It was just an anomaly out on the prairie, and so the Walnut Grove became kind of a famous place. And so that's where we didn't have a mascot in the early days of the sports teams, which was really interesting. It took them until, I can't remember, I didn't look. I got too many dates in my head, but I believe it was right around 1950 or maybe 40s, mid 40s to early 50 or to 1950, somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact date. That they put a vote to the student body, and the students themselves chose that name.
Chose Loggers.
Yeah.
Huh. So the walnut trees, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Walnut Grove or the trees? Did they name the trees? How did that work?
Right. Well, even when the railroad came through here, they used it as a point, and they called it Walnut Station.
Okay.
And so it was a reference point, basically. And then, obviously...
So they put Walnut and
Walnut
grove of trees together.
Yes.
Literally, that's how they did it.
And then they added, when we became an official village, they changed the name from the railroad, named it Walnut Station, to the name of Walnut Grove. But even there's a good story in the fact that they changed that name in 1878 to Walnut Grove. It didn't get officially done by the legislature, which it needed to be done until, I believe, 1892.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your cemetery tours. Now, was last year the first year you did
Correct, yes.
What made you think, this would be cool?
I had seen a few other places that had done it. In the museum, like I said, I work part-time at the museum, and they're always looking for new things, especially with the decline in the small town and Walnut Grove itself, and the things for people to do when they do come to visit in the summertime. We want people to have some things to do while they're there, in between visiting the museum and going to the pageant.
Other than They are their family.
Right. And on the weekends, we have the stuff in the park, but they need stuff to do anyway. And so we thought we would try that. It'd become popular in many other areas. And so I still think we can do a bunch more tweaking on it.
Well, of course, that was your first one, and I noticed when I went to one and did a story, you can tell your passion for it is there. It's not just, you know, you respond to a story even though you know a story, and you're reading it off a piece of paper, but you show that when you're talking to people, kind of like a teacher would, and like you say, history teachers. You got to keep it interesting.
Right.
Did you get good positive feedback from those things?
We did. Yep. The only setback, I don't know if it was the time you were there when the bus was late.
Yeah. That
Was that the time when you were here? And I ended up being a storyteller for an extra 45 minutes off the cuff.
It's called stretching at the end of the business.
But yeah, we did get good feedback. Not huge numbers, but like you said, it was the first time, and figuring out how to let people know about it was another area. But I do believe it's time for your second
Let's do it.
Christmas question.
Test me.
All right. Tying into the first question, who is credited with popularizing the modern image of Santa Claus in red and white? It is a famous company, which should.
Any idea?
There's a hint in that question as well with that, but
Red and white.
correct.
I'm thinking candy canes. Am I on the right track?
Not quite on the right track, but hey, close.
Well, call in, listeners, and you can win $1,000. No, I'm just kidding.
With Google these days, you can't do that
No,
anymore.
I can't. I'll take that back. I'll retract that. I'll edit that out. So, are all historians authors?
No, I don't think so.
Because you are an author. You number of publications.
You know, and I have a hard time calling myself an author. Even I've done a lot of research, and so
If you're published, you're an author.
okay,
That's the way I see
I'm officially an author then. However, I don't feel like you can still find mistakes in my books, even no matter how many times I try to edit it or whatever. For
Preaching to the
example,
choir, Dan.
but yeah, it's it ties back into what got me actually starting to publish or try to get my information out there was that I did all this research for years. I have a research room at my house that's full of obituaries.
You live in a museum. Dan.
Obituaries and every week I cut out articles out of the newspaper and file them and et cetera, et cetera. And when I got really sick, I didn't know how long I was going to be around. And so I wanted to do something with all this. I didn't want all this information to be lost that I had painstakingly gathered from old newspapers and other sources. So that was kind of how that got started. And I love the process of searching for the answers. The writing part is much more work, as you know. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily the fun part. And I also dealt with something, and I still do, called vestibular migraines, which computer screens are tough for me to work for very long on. And so I was constantly motion sick for about a year and a half, and trying to type and look at a screen to get that done was quite a challenge at the time. So
that screen headaches, we all get them. That's probably worse for you. I can definitely relate to the computer screen. I love to write, but just sitting at the computer so long all day, it's hard on the body, it's hard on the eyes.
Absolutely.
And, it can be a strain. All right, we're going to finish off here. Well, actually, we're not going to finish off. We're going to throw one more trivia question out there.
Awesome. All right. So actually, it's this tradition is kind of fading, but the tradition of sending each other Christmas cards did not start here in the United States. What country?
Not.
What country did the tradition of sending Christmas cards begin? And I can tell you, it was in 1843 that this became popular.
Christmas cards. Huh. Kind of a lost art, like you said. But, and I'm not even going to guess because I don't know geography or history that well and make a fool of myself. But hopefully someone out there in YouTube land will know the answer to that one.
And I think I'll give you a couple and give you the answers on these two since
let's
since I know that Pear loves politics. I'm just going to throw a couple things in there. Who do you think was the first president to have a Christmas tree at the White House? Not one of the more popular presidents, however. That'll be.
I would say, let's say Grover.
I'll give you a MASH would be my hint. Franklin Pierce, if you remember
MASH is
Benjamin.
my favorite show. Yes.
1853 was the first Christmas tree. And also, which president, to tie into politics here, of course, made Christmas Day a federal holiday. Didn't happen until 1870.
18. God. Oh boy. Someone listening to this knows this off the top of their head, but I can't even guess.
A Civil War general, that might be the Ulysses S. Grant, President
I
Grant.
was thinking Grant in the back of my head, but I didn't want to say it.
So
So what are the answers to your first two?
okay, so the original, you were correct, pair. You ding ding ding.
Green?
Was the original.
Smart.
And Santa Claus turned to a red and white outfit in the 1930s when Coca-Cola hired an artist by the name of Hadan Sundblom. And not only did it change that, but it changed the vision of Santa Claus totally.
And there's a lot of commercials, Coca-Cola commercials, that
Still.
around this time of year that we get the Santa Claus. and our holiday
Absolutely.
commercials for sure.
If you remember the old one that I still remember as a kid that I don't know, I hope they still play once in a while, is the Norelco. Santa,
sliding down
he's
the
sliding down the hill
Yeah.
on the Norelco Razor.
That
or
one
whatever.
sticks out, and the Budweiser ones.
Yeah,
the
just like-
Clydesdales, and I don't know if they play that one anymore.
So here's one that probably, sorry, I'm getting
No, go
carried
ahead.
away with my trivia, but how many lights did Clark Griswold use to light his house on National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
25,000.
Yes, you
Imported
are
Italian
correct.
twinkle lights. You're not going to stump me on Griswold.
All right, I didn't think I had to throw that. I figured you would definitely be.
And that's one that many people probably under the age of 50 or 60
Would know.
could answer.
Yeah.
Because it's
It's-
actually in my column in this week's paper.
Oh, is that right?
That
Good.
because Tara's son Ben won the Chamber's Christmas light contest.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
he's
cool.
17. He spent a couple weeks ago. He spent 14 hours over a weekend putting up lights,
Wow.
and he won $500.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
Nice.
He's a little junior Clark, and it kind of carries on the tradition my dad had on Center Street, and his dad had, just throwing everything in and going Clark Griswold on the bit. So.
Oh, that's so awesome. So then this Friday, I should warn you, is National Ugly Christmas Sweater Day. So if you want to partake,
Yep, I heard about that.
okay.
Cool, very nice. Let's finish up with my new segment, well, semi-new, best and worst.
Sure.
And I ask my guest, what's the best part of what you do, Dan?
I would say the best part is getting to listen to other people's stories. I enjoy because my main goal that makes me the happiest is when I write or say or tell a story or whatever, if it brings back a memory to the person I'm talking to or the person that's reading it. That is, as I mentioned earlier, we all become more nostalgic as we get older. And I think that's really the most meaningful part of history. Not only can you can learn lessons, obviously, and you don't want to repeat. We don't want to
Like
repeat
a fire
some-
department. in the
Exactly. We don't want to
1900s.
repeat the same mistakes
Yep.
over and over. However, I think that's the neatest part about history is it makes us remember things that from our past that bring up good.
Yeah, for sure.
There's also bad, obviously, but the good.
But history is history. It's good and it's bad.
That's
It's
right.
not all good.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
a
you
newspaper. You can't. It's not all going to be good news.
Exactly right.
We don't live in that world. We never have.
Right.
Probably never will. And the worst part of what you do, Dan, this is a tricky one for you because I know you love what you do,
It is.
but there's got to be something that just kind of wears you down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I do. I have my Facebook page, for example, Dan's History Works, that focuses on Walnut Grove stuff. And so I try to do little historical articles. I list people's obituaries. I do all kinds of things like that. And I constantly get requests from people for things. And sometimes that gets overwhelming because I don't get paid to do any of this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just
bummer.
doing it for fun and for people's enjoyment and, like I said, to bring back memories. But
So was it tough?
but I have people stop in the middle of the street. Did you
That's
know?
what I was going to say. It's like, is it tough to say no to people? It's
It
gotta
is- for me, it is.
No, I can't do this. I don't have time or whatever.
That, or I'll say I'll get to it, and then it'll eat at me, and then I have to do it and get it out of the way. So then which is fine. I enjoy doing it, but sometimes, as you know, you get stressed with your schedule gets tight or
Get
whatever.
burned out.
I don't think I ever.
Temporarily, maybe momentarily.
Yeah.
Kind of have to reset.
Sometimes, yes. Like you said, the computer screen stuff, everything, now it's amazing when I first started researching and things, you had to go to the courthouse, you had to dig through papers, and you had to go get the old newspapers. And now with things like Ancestry and other, with Google, whatever, search, although people are making money off of all those things as well.
It's more screen time though. And
It is, and that's hard, like you said, on anybody.
yeah.
But it's definitely fun, and if people do want to know something, that's, like I said, that's why I did this. It would be absolute. I always tell the people at the museum too. We have all this stuff stored. What's the point in having it if you don't share it with other people?
Yep.
And so that's the same way with the historical stuff, as you know.
Dan, you are off the hot seat. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you, Per.
This week's podcast was brought to you by Summit Massage in Tracy. Holidays got you stressed out? Aches and pains slowing you down? Life giving you a headache? Contact Jay at Summit Massage and let that stress melt away. Customized massage therapy to help you get back to your best. Call Jay at 507-626-0841 today.